Agent Ludwig, I would remind you, you are still under oath, sir. Further questions, Ms. Brandstad?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to hand you the binder with the item that's previously been marked as Exhibit X. I put 2 Post-it notes in there just for your reference. We'll remove them before this goes to the jury.
Yes, ma'am.
I previously referred you to the financial affidavit for Joe Sedlock. Is that correct? That's under tab 4.
Tab 4 of,
So I believe it's the smaller of the many binders in front of you.
I'm not sure what this document is. And then,
Do you find the financial affidavit for Joe Sedlock?
I see 6 of them, yes.
If you look,
No, that's not correct. That one's Joel's.
I believe it's,
There is only one for Robert Sedlock.
okay. Look at the phone number, and does it match the phone number that's marked in the cell tower information?
We're at on this document.
May I have Ms. Canny approach?
You may.
It's at 9:36 a.m. And it should be marked with an orange Post-it note.
Give me the seconds of that.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I didn't move it, ma'am.
Okay.
Just
9:30.
I have it now, ma'am.
Is that the same as one of the numbers listed in the financial affidavit for Joe Sedlock?
Yes, on June 19th, 2005 at 9:36:02 hours, there's a 2-second duration. Originating number is 641-203-8285. Dialed number is 563-379-8712. And the cell phone called number is 563-379-8712, which is the same number as Robert Sedlock reported back on June 3rd of 2014 to the court.
And just to clarify, Robert Sedlock and Joe Sedlock are the same person. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Now, I think when we left off, we were talking about information from Krista Norris, Angela Johnson, and Nicole Sedlock. Now, the first time you heard Nicole Sedlock's name was in 2015, correct?
I'm not sure when we got onto Nicole Sedlock. I believe it was from Joe himself, but I don't recall when.
So if it was from Joe, that would have been in 2015?
Yes, we originally talked to Joe in fall of 2015.
And Nicole Sedlock was not interviewed until December of 2018.
I believe that's correct, yes.
And Angela Johnson, I don't know if we established, but she was interviewed on St. Patrick's Day this year.
Yes, that's correct.
And actually, Angela Johnson's name came up in a tip from April of 2016.
I don't recall.
Well,
We had multiple tips, so it's very possible. I just don't know the date or.
Well, if you look at tab 32 in the binder in front of you,
Yes, ma'am.
that's a tip that came in by email to you, April 15th, 2000, well, yes, April 15th of 2002, and it says Angela Johnson, and it gives her a number, just called stating she has learned information about the death of Shirley Carter, including names and where the weapon used was disposed of. So that tip came in April 15th, 2016, correct?
Yes, that came into our headquarters, yes.
And it got to you on that same day.
I would assume, yes, it was forwarded to me later that evening.
So, April 16th, 2016, there's an incoming phone call with a phone number with information stating that she's got information about the death, including names and where the weapon was disposed of, and she was first talked to during the trial.
That's correct.
Let's go to the next one here. Well, actually, no, we're still within Kristen Norris. Kristen Norris told you that Nicole Sedlock told her that her husband was involved in the murder. I'm sorry, I've already asked you that. Let me move on. Kristen Norris said that they were looking for drugs, but doesn't know if they actually found anything. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
She heard that John, Joel, and Joe had previously been watching the house and knew that Shirley's husband and her would go out for coffee every morning, and they thought that they had left that morning, but she was there unexpectedly.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, we'll move to Amber Shin. Amber Shin stated that she recalls a time when Callie Shin tried really hard to convince her that she didn't drive to the crime scene on the day of the homicide. That she did drive, I'm sorry. Tried really hard to convince her that she did drive to the crime scene on the day of the homicide, but she didn't.
Yes, that statement was marked, yes.
Do you know who the she and who tried to convince who, what any of that means?
If you refer back to that interview,
It's under tab 17. That's what it is.
I conducted an interview of Amber Shin December 6th of 2018. And the purpose of the interview was it was reported that Joseph Sedlock stated that Amber Shin may have information regarding the homicide, and it was known that Amber Shin was in a relationship with Joe Sedlock in the fall of 2015.
Okay. Well, my question was, the report said, we've established Callie Shin had tried really hard to convince her that she did drive. Tried really hard to convince her that she did drive to the crime scene on the day of the homicide, but she didn't. Do you know, was Callie trying to convince Amber that Callie drove to the crime scene, or was Callie trying to convince Amber that Amber drove to the crime scene?
I don't know what she was thinking.
And you didn't ask, did you?
I don't know, I'd have to go back, probably not, I'd have to refer back to that audio.
Now, we did talk a little bit that you did interview Nicole Sedlock last month. And Nicole Sedlock told you that she heard people say the woman wasn't supposed to be there, and she was, and one of them shot her and the other one panicked. Is that correct?
I believe that was from one of the Snow jailhouse snitches in jail with Nicole at the time that we learned that from. And I believe you're correct. I don't remember who that individual is.
Well, that's what Nicole told you after that, isn't it?
I believe she told Detective Carris that I did not conduct the interview. I believe Detective Carris did.
And Nicole Sedlock also said that the weapon it ended up with Roger Shin.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. Let's move to Mitch Parker. Mitch Parker approached law enforcement on his own, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And he said he wanted to talk about Joel Followell, John Followell, and Jeremiah Laird. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Parker said that Jeremiah Laird is a relative of the Carters.
We had learned that at one point, that I believe he's the one that tells us that.
Well, actually, there's more than one person who said that Jeremiah Laird was related to the Carters. Was it related to Shirley Carter, aren't they?
Yes, we had heard that many times.
Now, in fact, Jeremiah Laird is related to a woman named Sherry Carter.
I believe that's correct, yes.
And Sherry Carter does receive fentanyl patches or painkillers, doesn't she?
Does she reside in Sheraton, Iowa?
Yes.
Yes, I believe that is correct. I
And-
would refer that back to that interview. I did not conduct that interview. That was an interview conducted by Detective Carris.
And in fact, Sherry Carter's home has been burglarized multiple times.
I don't know.
Now, following that information, there were a few, well, let me step back. There were a few names mentioned by Mitch Parker, including Christine McCombs and Jason Wesley and Jordan Durham, correct?
Correct, yes.
Christine McCombs was not interviewed.
I think Christine McCombs is actually Christine Ryder, if I recall that correctly.
If you found out that Christine McCombs and Christine Ryder are two different people, would you then admit that Christine McCombs hadn't been interviewed?
Yeah, if we didn't interview her, we didn't do that. If we did, we did. I don't recall.
Do you know if Christine McCombs and Christine Ryder are the same person?
I don't. I know who Christine Ryder is. I know her by face. But I'm not sure who Christine McCombs is.
Jason Wesley was not interviewed,
Not to my knowledge, no.
and Jordan Durham was not interviewed until January of 2019.
That's correct.
And this is all off of information from October 2015.
And who was that from?
Mitch Parker.
That's correct.
We can talk about Shane Carris. Shane Carris provided information that he was present in a conversation between Joe Sedlock, Amber Shin, and Barry George. Is that correct?
I don't remember that, but if it's in the report, I'm sure that's correct. Was that report ran by me or Detective Kais?
You can look at it. It's Exhibit Y11.
Shane Carris was interviewed by Detective Kais, correct?
And he stated he was present in a conversation between Joe Sedlock, Barry George, and Amber Shin. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
In that conversation, Sedlock stated that he murdered a person who Shane believed to be Shirley Carter.
That's correct, yes.
Said that he did it with a gun.
Yes.
And Shane also told you that he believed that, or that he had talked with Callie about believing that Amber Shin might have been a witness.
That's correct.
Let's move to Corey Welden. Kevin Welden. I'm sorry, Kevin Welden. Kevin Welden provided information that shortly after the murder, Rory Pearson came to his house hysterical. Is that correct?
Where's his interview? I did not conduct that interview.
That'd be
I
exhibit
believe that's correct, but
A8.
A8 is an interview of Kevin Welden by Detective Kais.
And Kevin Welden said that Rory was at his house hysterical. He believes on the day of the murder. Is that correct?
It stated around the time of the murders, he, his brother Caleb, and his mother were at Mr. Welden's home when Rory Pearson came to his house hysterical.
And let's move to Jordan Durham. As of July 2018, you weren't sure who Jordan Durham was, were you?
I believe that's correct. We attempted to locate her many times, but just never made that connection.
Now, you had been told that Jordan Durham had heard Joel confess by phone. That was in interviews by that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was information we had received, that Joel was in jail at the time that he made that confession over the phone, which I found incredibly unlikely because people don't confess to murders while they're in jail on the phone.
How many times have you seen jail phone calls entered as evidence?
I'm a pretty new detective. I don't know if I've ever have done that. But
So
it's definitely a key that we want to listen to, and we want to listen to all the jail phone calls if we possibly can, especially if there's information that they exist.
Well, okay, wait. you said you want to listen to all the jail phone calls that you can, but you didn't request Jordan Durham's jail phone calls until 2019, and you didn't request the Followell phone calls until they had already been over a year old and destroyed.
That's correct, after you requested them, correct.
So you weren't in a hurry to listen to those. But let's talk about,
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
yeah.
Not
I
sure
re-
there was a question posed there, rather commentary by Ms. Branston.
Your Honor, I retract that comment.
Thank you.
Jordan Durham. Tamika Jenkins said in 2015, said Jordan may have information about the murder. Correct?
That's correct, yes.
She also said that Jordan Durham was present when Jason Beeman made the comment about not being able to find the gun. Correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Wendy Bonnet said that Jordan heard the confession from Joel over the phone.
Yes,
Correct.
that's correct.
Brad Calder said that Jordan told him that Joel and John were responsible for killing an elderly lady near Pleasantville. Correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And Lacona's near Pleasantville.
Yeah, it is. Especially the crime scene's close to Pleasantville.
Mitch Parker said Jordan was present when Joel was having nightmares and saying, quote, she won't stop screaming. Correct?
She wouldn't stop screaming, or she won't. Yes, that's correct.
And Christina Ryder said that Jordan is a past accomplice of Joel Followell.
Yes, and we know them to be boyfriend, girlfriend at given times.
And these reports occurred in 2015, 2018, 2016, 2016.
Yes, we'd heard those stories over and over and over.
Okay, so we'll go to Britney Jans. Britney Jans stated she had knowledge about the homicide and specifically said that Joe Sedlock, John Followell, and Joel Followell were involved in the homicide and that they were in Callie Shin's car.
That's correct, yes.
Brittany said she was originally supposed to go to Des Moines with Joe Sedlock, John Followell, and Joe Sedlock, John Followell, and Joel Followell. Correct?
Britney Jans says that?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Instead, they asked her to clean out their car, meaning clean out evidence.
Yeah, that's correct.
And they offered her money to clean the car.
I don't recall that part, but it's very possible.
And Brittany Jans said that Callie Shin, Charity Roush, and Taylor Jones would have information about the homicide.
That's correct. She does.
And I'm just... Now, that was an interview in January of 2018, correct?
Yes, that was conducted in January of 2018.
Charity Roush wasn't interviewed until November of 2018.
I don't know when she was interviewed, but it was quite some delay.
You could look at Exhibit K9 to confirm that,
I would trust you in that manner.
okay? Taylor Jones wasn't interviewed until December of 2018.
Okay.
Is that correct?
I trust you on that date.
So let's talk about Rory Pearson. Multiple people stated that Rory Pearson left just after the murder of Shirley Carter. Is that correct?
Well, define just after. We had learned it was several months, weeks after the homicide.
Several months?
I believe we had heard it several different times, and I believe the most reliable source was Daniels, Mr. Camerick, who drove him out there, and I would believe that to be the most trusted information.
So Rory Pearson's name came up many times throughout this investigation as well, didn't it?
It definitely was there, yes, like everybody else's.
Tamika Jenkins said that Rory Pearson may know where the gun was hidden.
I believe so, yes.
Kevin Welden, we previously discussed, said Rory Pearson was upset. Christine Ryder said that Rory Pearson was involved. Is that correct?
I don't recall Christine Ryder saying that. I wasn't one that conducted that interview, but if it's in the interview, I feel it to be true.
Well, it's in Exhibit Q9 if you want to take a look at that.
Q9 is an interview of Christine Ryder conducted by Detective Reed Carris on May 30th of 2018.
Is Rory Pearson's name mentioned in that interview?
I skim it, I don't see it, but if you could point it out to me where he does say that, I just don't see it.
The reference in Christine Ryder's in Q9. I'll come back to that when we come. We've got a few things that we'll come back to. And I'm going to change completely. Let's talk about essentially alibis provided. John Followell said that on the date.
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may.
John Followell, when interviewed, stated that he was with Bubba Voss on the date of the murder. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
And do you know what Bubba's actual first name is?
I don't. I can't think of it. It's in the report.
Now, Mr. Voss wasn't interviewed until last month, February of 2019, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And Mr. Voss states that refutes the statements within Mr. Followell's alibi, doesn't he?
I don't think Mr. Voss can tell us where he was at on June 19th or who he's with.
Well, if you look at tab 21, Mr. Voss certainly, well, let's just go back. John Followell originally said that he traveled with Mr. Voss while Mr. Voss had job interviews, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
And Mr. Voss says his interviews were by phone.
I believe that's correct, yes. Mr. Voss had multiple different job interviews, and I don't believe Mr. Voss would keep any of his job interviews correct in his head, especially dating back those 3 years.
And well, because it was so much later, did law enforcement attempt to follow up to see if those interviews were in-person or phone interviews?
Yes, we conducted information with TPI, which is a business in Newton, which he says he was, and also at Van Gorp's in Marion County. And they show a record of a Voss. Now, his name is actually Dustin Voss, but they had a record of Justin Voss, or a different name similar to Justin Voss. I'm not sure what that was without reading that, but
And those were for phone interviews, correct?
I don't recall. I don't think they could tell us what those records were. I think that came from Mr. Voss themselves. That Van Gorp or TPI didn't keep those records.
And actually, previous to that, in July 2015, John Followell stated that on the morning of the murder, he was with Emily Gulan.
We didn't talk to Followells, and their name were not on our radar in July of 2015.
Look at Exhibit L5.
I'm at L5.
That's an interview of Joel Followell from 2015, isn't it?
That's correct.
And if you look at, W10,
The L5 interview that you referenced to was not regarding the homicide. I think this is when he was upset that he was being harassed by law enforcement. So he had a conversation with Sheriff Sandholt in the bathroom of the courthouse, not related to the homicide.
then let's look at Exhibit W10.
W10 is a interview of Joel correction, John Followell in October of 2015.
So that is an October 2015 interview with John Followell about the murder, correct?
That's correct. At that point, he became on our radar from Joe Sedlock himself.
And at that time, he stated that he was with Emily Gulan at the time of the murder.
I know he was hanging around with Ms. Gulan. Yes, he said he believes he bonded Emily Gulan out of jail in June 2015 and got a ride to his neighbor's house, Joey, in Knoxville.
Actually, he says he was sure he and Emily were in Pella or Des Moines.
What part of the page are you on?
It's within the bulleted points on the second page,
Page number
about
2.
midway down.
Midway down. I trust what he says. I don't say it yet, but I'm sure it's a very thorough interview.
Well, I'll give you time because I think this is an important point.
Are you talking about after I told
May I approach the
him
witness?
any?
You may.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm pointing to a bulleted point. And is this where he says he was sure he and Emily were in Pella or Des Moines?
Yes. It states, after I told him any phone around the scene was documented, he said Emily's phone wouldn't be on that, and that he was sure he and Emily were in Pella or Des Moines.
And then you didn't talk with Emily Gulan until 3 years later in April of 2018, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Have you listened to the audio of that interview?
Of Emily Gulan?
Yes.
Actually, I have not, no.
Would it be appropriate for an officer to start an interview by saying, "You are John's alibi"?
Did I conduct that interview?
No.
You know, there comes a time that when we're that far into the investigation, and this is an evidence-based investigation, there's no evidence that indicates, would I have done that? No, hopefully. But I've done a lot of stupid stuff in my career and during interviews, and so I'd hope I wouldn't have done that, but I'm not going to judge another officer for doing that.
Well, Emily Gulan does not confirm that she was with John Gulan at that time, John Followell at that time, does she?
I don't believe she does, no.
And in fact, she says she asked John if he committed the murder and he wouldn't answer her.
I don't think they were on real good speaking terms, but I don't recall that, no. I believe that to be true, yes.
Okay, you do believe that Emily Gulan asked John Followell if he committed the murder and he wouldn't answer her.
I believe the history that she said that during the interview, yes.
Let's talk about Shayna Flesher. You received a tip that Shayna Flesher may have information about this homicide, is that correct?
I believe, yes, her name definitely comes up in the interview, or in the investigation.
That name came up in fall 2015,
I believe that's probably to be true.
and she was interviewed in April of 2018, correct?
I believe that to be true, yes.
And similarly, Rebecca Piker was not interviewed until November of 2018. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that name at all.
It's spelled, it looks like the name would be pronounced Puker, but it's pronounced Piker. Are you familiar with the name now?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
You received information at some point that Taylor Marshall may have information about this case. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I'm not sure on that name. If you could refer me back. I believe that was conducted by Detective Reed Kais.
Well, I will tell you that we could provide audio for you, but there is no report. This is information provided by Sean Gurdam in November 15th. Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah, Sean Gurnham was interviewed, I believe, by Detective Reed Kais.
Well, do you believe that Taylor Marshall was interviewed by you?
I've interviewed a lot of people in this case, along with my other cases. I don't know every person I've interviewed in the last 4 years.
Do you know the name Jeremy Morris?
Yes, I believe Jeremy Morris did construction.
Roofing? Does that refresh your
Yes,
memory?
I believe I know what individual you're referring to, yes.
And you're aware that Jeremy Morris provided roofing services on Bill and Shirley Carter's home in early 2015?
He did do some roofing at the crime scene. I don't believe it was 2015. I think it was a year or two prior to that. I think it was quite some time before that.
Right, that was 2014. At that time, he had is it Justin Flesher working for him.
That's correct. I believe he did.
John Followell has also worked for Jeremy Morris in his roofing business, hasn't he?
I believe at some point he has, yes.
And you don't know if John Followell was one of the people who put the roof on the Carter home, do you?
We don't believe he did, and we don't believe he was there. He indicates he's never been to that crime scene, and I believe that to be true.
Okay, because John Followell said he'd never been to the crime scene?
That's correct.
Did you ever do anything to find out when John Followell worked for Morris Roofing?
I don't think we could ever confirm that he did work for Morris Roofing. We asked Mr. Morris to provide records, and he was not able to provide that. We followed up with an interview with his wife, who was more than likely most likely the bookkeeper of that construction company, and we weren't able to confirm that he was or was not an employee.
When did you ask Jeremy Morris for those records?
The date of that interview.
At that time, you were aware that John Followell may have been an employee of Morris Roofing?
I'm not sure at what point we learned that or when we knew that.
Is that reflected in any police report, any law enforcement report, anywhere in this file that you are aware that John Followell had been an employee of Morris Roofing?
No, I don't believe it is.
Are you familiar with Jeff Schrader?
Yes, I know who Jeff Schrader is, and I participated in that interview.
Jeff Schrader, do you know if there's a report for your interview with Jeff Schrader?
I believe there should be. I recall that interview, so It definitely should have been provided. It was conducted while he was in prison, and I recall that interview.
Jeff Schrader had heard that the murder was from a burglary gone bad, is that correct?
That's correct. That's a rumor that was going around right away that day, within an hour of the in the community.
Did you ever find out from whom he heard that?
I don't recall.
I'm going to switch gears. And let's talk about the gun from Roger Shin's house. During this investigation, law enforcement recovered 2 firearms from Roger Shin's house, correct?
At least 2 guns. I'm not sure total number of how many guns we took from his house. It could be more than. I know there's 2. I'm not sure if there's more than 2. That's a long time ago.
One of those guns was a .270.
Yes, I believe that'd be correct.
And that .270, according to Roger Shin, was received from Matt Camrick.
Correct. He bought those from Matt Camrick.
And that was in June of 2015.
I don't recall the day he wrote a check to Matt Camrick, which was cashed that day, so I forget that date of that check.
Could be June 29th of 2015.
That's very possible.
First of all, you were there when that gun was taken from Roger Shin's house, correct?
Yes, I believe I was.
You didn't go in and check all the guns that Roger Shin had.
He had a lot of guns. He had no idea how many guns he had, but hundreds.
Did you go into his house and look at the guns?
I remember going into his house. I remember looking at guns, but I think he has a gun room, and we did not go down there. He brought the guns up to us.
So the .270 came with a 6 cartridge clip, correct?
I don't recall.
Well,
Whatever my evidence sheet shows.
well, if you look at Exhibit 12, is that the receipt for that .270?
Yes, that's DCI Form 13, our receipt form that is authored by me, issued to Roger Shin on the 19th of October, 2015 at 15:56 p.m. for 1 Remington 270-7600 with a serial number of B-Boy 844-2108 and magazines with 4 live rounds.
That gun comes with a 6-round clip, correct?
I don't know. There's 4 live rounds in the magazine at the time. Or, I'm sorry, 4 live rounds in the gun.
Would playing the auto help refresh your memory as to how many cartridges that clip held?
Audios and videos are always good, so, yes.
Your Honor, this will take us just a moment.
Okay, while that is being accomplished, you have referred to a number of exhibits, and you just referred to Exhibit 12. You are not referring to State's Exhibit 12 that's in evidence, correct?
That is correct.
you.
Anything that's not offered, I'm referring to numbers and letters within the binders in front of Agent Ludwick.
Thank you.
Your Honor, while Ms. Canny is setting this up, shall I continue questioning just for expedience?
That would be fine, thank you.
Well, you answered one of the questions, which was there were 4 live rounds in that cartridge, correct?
That's why I documented, yes.
So if it turns out that it's a 6 cartridge clip, that means that there were 2 rounds fired from that gun?
No, not at all. Just means that gun has the capability, if it is a 6-round magazine, And to me, it says there's that gun is capable of having 6 rounds in the magazine plus 1 in the chamber, so a total of 7.
Okay. So it could be that someone just put 4 rounds in the, it could be that someone just put 4 cartridges in the clip, or it could be that there were 2 fired. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Your Honor, I would ask if the witness may approach just to listen to the applicable audio.
If you would, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, could we make some record as to what just happened? Was Mr. Special Agent Ludwick able to listen to the audio?
He was not.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bull.
And we may come back to that. If Roger Shin states within the audio that it's a 6-round clip, you would have no reason to disagree with that, would you?
No, I would classify Mr. Roger Shin as a gun expert, much more than I am, and he knows his guns.
Ms. Branstad, would this be a convenient time to take our afternoon recess?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be at recess for the afternoon. Please remember the admonition I previously gave you. Please refrain from discussing the case with anyone, including family or friends. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves. Please don't form any opinions or conclusions. Keep an open mind. You have not yet heard all of the evidence. We will plan to reconvene promptly at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have a great evening.